I'm trying to do a great job here in front of the titans of this Web3 industry. I've known these gents for many years now, and I'm really excited to how this panel is going to unfold. I personally have a lot of questions I need some clarification from, and I'm hoping to put them on the spot here during this panel and get some solid answers here. So let's start with a big question here. I've heard conflicting statements from you gents on various podcasts. It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of your work through your projects and through your angel investments and your ecosystem. So the crux of the issue is that going forward, is block space a commodity or is it a scarce unit of accounting? Which way are you, bending forward? Maybe let's start with Sandeep.
Yeah, so in my mind, I feel that the layer one block space is basically something that is providing you extreme level of security as well as decentralization. And from where, the way we are building in the layer two world is that block space is going to provide a lot of security and decentralization to these layer two, layer three chains and whatnot. So I feel for layer one, the block space is going to be the, I think you use the word valuable or
scarce,
scarce, and on the layer two and layer three levels, it has to be a commodity, right? It has to be extremely low cost so that millions and millions of users can use dApps. So that's how I see it.
Thank you. Yuri?
I think my view on this is quite similar to Sandeep's, actually. I think that layer one indeed is the security and decentralization layer, and as such is going to be by design a very scarce resource. And I think that as we saw with bandwidth and many other sort of examples in the past, as capacity opens up, demand that's right now sitting on the sidelines and waiting for infrastructure that could support it would show up. So the scarcity is something that we should sort of plan ahead for. That's going to be the environment we operate in for many years to come in this regard.
Illia?
Yeah, I would actually maybe modularize what Sandeep and Nuri is saying. And there's a data availability side, which is actually probably not going to be scarce. Like already we have decentralized storage that can store, petabytes of data. There is an execution side, which can be also modularized further. And so for execution, I think the scarce resource is at time, execution. Is like, I want results now, I want to settle now, I want to know kind of if I execute this transaction now, what's going to happen. That is scarce resource. That's why there's priority fees. That's why there's always going to be kind of a race to the top. And then kind of with more latency in the way of knowing the results of executing, of settling, it becomes more and more a commodity, right? And that's where, different layer twos, sharding, etc., like all of those options can come in as a way to satisfy that commodity. But I think the priority of execution is always will be a scarce resource.
Fantastic. Okay, so that was a warm-up question. So let's go into some heavy-hitting questions. The big, exciting, pivotal moment for the entire crypto industry is Ethereum's the merge, right? And there's a lot of excitement around that. So let's take your read on what this means for the entire industry. Let's start with Illia. What does the merge mean? What does it mean for crypto? What does it mean for adoption? Why is this significant, or why is it not significant? Because it's just a technological change. Would love to hear your perspective.
So I think there's kind of few sides of this, right? There's a philosophical side of switching from proof of work to proof of stake. And I think that is interesting on its own right, because kind of for a while, all of our, alternative layer ones and kind of other options that have been running, they've been all proof of stake. And it always were compared to, for example, Ethereum's proof of work as being more secure. And so now we're actually getting to a common ground and in an interesting way, kind of becoming more similar, right? And that, in a way is an interesting topic to discuss. I think the other side is the kind of people expect potentially some scalability coming from this specific event. That is not true. And so that is more, again, of a change of consensus, of ability to kind of produce blocks by stake, which has a lot of economical benefits for Ethereum token, but it does not introduce kind of scalability. And kind of what it does do, I think that's interesting, is kind of a little bit switching this idea that Ethereum is not able to execute, right, and kind of innovate, and actually kind of putting them back into this ability to continue shipping. And I think that's also interesting, because it does kind of shift a bit, basic understanding, like the number of proposals for, like, everything from dunk sharding to single slot finality to all of these things, like now I would say expanded. And so like I would say people were not thinking about that before. So for me, kind of to summarize, I think it's really interesting event. I think it's kind of majorly shows that all of the networks that we've built, they are continuously evolving. They're not static, and it's not. We should not expect that this shape of consensus or this shape of execution gonna stay, but instead focus on the value that this brings and kind of what it delivers.
Fantastic. Yuri?
Unfortunately, I tend to agree with the people speaking just before me. So once again, I agree with what Illia said here. I'm maybe qualify this a bit in the sense that the Ethereum community moves with caution and in a very deliberate way, but keeps repeatedly over and over again doing some very significant things. The AP 1559, I think, was sort of one such major step not too long ago. Now the move to proof of stake. I think that in terms of widespread adoption of this technology and the public not only perception, the actual impact on the environment, I think the move to proof of stake is a welcome change. I agree with Illia that now we'll be comparing apples to apples sort of in a more informed way, and that in itself is an interesting experiment. But other than that, I don't think end users will be, I hope they won't be affected in any sort of, any painful way. Should be a smooth transition as we see it.
Thank you. Sandeep?
Yeah, so I want to, first for the audience also, just to, because there is a lot of kind of misunderstanding around what this merge is this merge ETH 2.0? And what Illia was also mentioning about that, is it going to bring scalability to Ethereum and things like that? So, some of those things needs to be clarified very clearly, that this is not ETH 2.0, the ETH 2.0, the design where you have sharding and all that. This is simply a move from proof of work to proof of stake. And as Illia was also saying, this will not add any scalability on the base layer. And the third thing, what Yuri was mentioning, that hopefully 99.9%, because it's been tested well, there will be no impact on any kind of application or layer twos. There is absolutely no impact. Like you won't even know that something changed in the background, right, as a user. So these two, three things are very important. In terms of like how significant it is, I feel that, because my personal, goal and mission is basically to bring Web3 to the masses, right? So, and I feel that is going to happen, of course, with the Web3 startups that we have today. And, a lot of people are innovating in the Web3 native space. But I strongly feel that the masses will come when the giants of Web2 or enterprises and, big brands and everybody starts choosing or starts, kind of building Web3 applications. And for them, it was a very difficult conversation before, when Ethereum was in POW mode, where it is proof of work is not very, environmentally sustainable. There are a lot of, these things around that. Obviously, it consumes a lot of electricity and all that, not good for the planet overall. So I think this move to proof of stake actually quells a lot of fears for them, right? That, this is not like a non-green technology. This is fairly green. I think for me, that's one of the pivotal points from the adoption point of view. because now that will kind of excite a lot of people who were like on the sidelines that, okay, this might not be green. The other part is also, I think Ethereum as an asset, I feel like I am also, very been in Ethereum community for, for the longest time and all that. So I think overall as a Ethereum as a asset, also it makes it stronger, because now Ethereum as an asset not only has a not even stable, but deflationary supply. The Ethereum as an asset becomes a yield-bearing asset, which many big, financial people also have said, like Warren Buffett and all that, that Bitcoin doesn't have any value and things like that. There is no use and things like that. So no offense to any, Bitcoin maxis and all that. I'm just, telling the facts. I know that Ethereum now will have, deflationary supply. It becomes a yield-bearing asset because you can put it on proof of stake and earn from the transaction fees. And Ethereum ETH always has a basic use that, this world computer that is being built or internet of value that is being built, it is used to access that world computer. So that makes Ethereum also as a very strong asset and, more stabler, I feel, because it's not only built on perception or kind of perception of people of its value. It has a genuine, intrinsic value to it. So I think that is also good for the overall, technology industry. And I feel that this is, as Illia was also mentioning, that this is a very big milestone for Ethereum community to do like a major change. So it kind of reinstates people's faith in Ethereum community as a whole, that they will keep delivering these significant updates in the rollout. And for a layer 2 or kind of this Ethereum scaling platform, that also is very helpful, because a lot of future things which can make layer 2s more efficient and more secure, those kind of updates like EIP 4844 and things like that can also come in. So that also makes it very significant.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sandeep, for that context there. Let's now switch gears, go a little higher up the stack. So one of the theses that I have is that every cycle, the applications break the infrastructure, and the infrastructure then levels up for the next cycle applications. So that has always been over the past couple of cycles. For example, in the 2017 cycle, there was no stablecoins, and stablecoin as an infrastructure piece is now pretty prevalent. So in your opinion, what would be the infra that is missing that the applications that tried to get deployed in this cycle were not able to, but now builders can focus on building that missing infrastructure so that the next cycle, the apps can actually be deployed? So let's start with Sandeep here.
Yeah, so I mean, I totally agree with that context. Like, if you see the background, like where we started from in 2017, where we were, what kind of applications were there, then, a bit of scalability got achieved in, let's say, 2020, where a lot of layer 2, layer 1 networks launched. And from there on, we saw a, kind of a hockey stick growth in terms of number of applications being built across the whole Web3 space. So definitely, as more and more scalability is getting unlocked, more and more it is opening up the playground for more and more apps who are sitting on the sidelines. As Yuri said, that this demand is sitting on the sidelines and it starts getting in. And also obviously in terms of the ancillary infrastructure products, like like you guys also at Covalent, like indexers, like things like graph protocol or wallets and things like that. Everything is improving step by step. One thing I'm not 100% happy about is probably the wallet. The wallet experiences are still not that great for an average user. And mobility, like, I think nobody has been able to figure out properly the mobile, experience for the users, because, right now you have to do deep linking and it will pop up a wallet app and you sign and all that. So those things needs to be resolved more prominently. Whatever solutions right now are there, they are like fairly complicated. But I think overall, the developers have everything, like developer tooling, IDs and things like that. Everything is there. So I think once this next stage of scalability gets unlocked, more layer 2 zero knowledge technology, as Starkware has been pioneering. Even we are building ZK EVM and things like that. As those things also get unlocked, I think there is everything for the apps to build more better experiences. And go to right now, I feel that the total DAU in the entire blockchain space is stuck somewhere between 5 to 10 million. It used to be before, like, let's say 2020, 500K to a million users, including all blockchains. I'm saying Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything. Even now it will be like 5 million to 10 million max. I think with this next wave of scalability that is getting unlocked, with a lot of layer 2 projects launching and things like that, and obviously layer 1s are also there, I think we'll probably be able to take in next 18 to 24 months to probably be able to cater like somewhere between, let's say, 20 to 50 million users. I think that I see as the next step in terms of applications.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yuri?
Yes, it won't surprise anyone that in our view, the metaphor you gave, we very much subscribe to that. And the missing link, of course, was scalability. And that's what we've been working on since 2018. We're of the opinion that validity proofs, or ZK proofs, is the basic infrastructure that needs to be built out to support this as a layer 2 over Ethereum. And that's what we've been doing for the past several years. Conceptually, this is a powerful notion in the sense that it now allows one or multiple strong computers to compute, and then everyone else in a very inclusive fashion can simply limit their computational work to verification. And this would be at the heart of the scaling approach that we propose. We're working hard to bring this to production. We've had our SaaS scaling service on mainnet Ethereum since the middle of 2020. And we are working to get Starknet in the hands of as many developers as possible. The alpha has been on mainnet Ethereum since November of last year, supporting general computation, composability, everything that a developer would expect in the context of putting any and all ideas they have in the hands of users, whether it's on their desktop or mobile phone, etc.
Illia, I'm sure you have some thoughts about the wallet usability angle.
Yeah, I mean, our view always been that usability comes first and scalability is just a tool for usability. And so obviously that's very important. And I think all of us made, huge progress, but I think we're still, pretty far on usability if we compare to Web 2. And I think wallets definitely is a big thing. How do we make it easier? How do we make it safer for people to not feel like they're going to lose their seed phrase and lose everything they own, right? I think addressing that fear is one of the most important pieces. The other thing I think for application developers specifically that missing, I started talking about this in Korea actually, is a notion of, I call it remote accounts. Is this idea that actually as a user, you don't really care which chain the app is on. Like you just want to make sure that your wallet with your assets actually connects to it and works, right? And so kind of this idea is we can kind of abstract out a lot of stuff now between bridging and kind of some of the meta transactions and some of the other things, and just create almost like virtual accounts on other chains that use and own things there without needing to actually register an account explicitly. And so I think that notion can create a very powerful interoperability for users, so they don't need to think like, oh, I'm on a chain A and I need to join chain B, or I'm on layer 2A and I need to join chain B to do something, right? While I want to do something on chain C, right? Like all that should not be really in front of the user. They should just use the app and kind of enjoy the value, get the NFTs, play the game, participate in whatever the communication is. And then kind of the layer underneath should just settle all the stuff, like bridge whatever is needed and index whatever data and put it in the user's perspective. And then I think the other big thing, which almost every single developer who are truly want to build something hits is privacy. Is at the end is like blockchain is not actually a privacy tool. It is a transparency tool. It's a tool for everyone to agree on the same thing. And so privacy is kind of required if you want to build any kind of institutional or enterprise applications, because they cannot put everybody's data out, right? And for a lot of use cases, you don't want data to be outside, like visible to everyone for every single transaction. And so I think that's a big missing piece. It's also, with recent events, a very hot topic, but kind of if we think from a privacy for developers specifically, right? Like how do you communicate encrypted data? How do you use it, etc. Like, but there's no good tooling for that right now. There's no kind of infrastructure to deliver that. So I think those two pieces kind of came together will unlock the next kind of wave, that goes beyond just like, DeFi, which is okay-ish to be public, but actually start to build more social, start to build more kind of communities, etc. that right now happen actually on Discord and on other like venues that are fully centralized.
Fantastic. Thank you for that comprehensive answer. So let's go to a lighter note here on entrepreneurship and leadership. So I became an entrepreneur because I was inspired by the story of Narayan Murthy, who founded Infosys, where he went to his father-in-law or future father-in-law and asked for a loan, and also asked for the daughter in marriage. And he's like, "What are you doing?" "I'm going to start a company." And it's like, "Well, that's not a real job." And then he built an iconic company. And then you have Zuckerberg, and you have Bill Gates, and you have all of these titans of the industry. And obviously, you guys are parts of very successful projects here. Now, is Web3 and leadership different from Web2, Web1 traditional technology companies, or is it more of the same? At some point, I noticed that some of you guys here have removed the CEO and CEO roles. You're just co-founders or project team leads, things like that. How are things different? Let's start with Uri here.
Yeah, so I've been an entrepreneur for a good number of years. I think things go sort of a little deeper than whether you run the show and hold on to the CEO title or not. And I think that both internally and externally, I think that's of limited consequence. I think the challenges that are presented to us today are in many ways derived from the advancement in technology and the ability to actually operate and run a distributed team worldwide. That has actually nothing to do at this point with work. Let me put it this way. This is independent of Web3, right? This affects also Web2 companies that operate today. And that presents a significant challenge in terms of team building and maintaining sort of a unified spirit and a sense of mission and sticking to a plan and executing on it, etc. So I think these things present significant challenges. We did our best actually to remain sort of on a single site up till about a year ago when we started hiring folks around the world. At this point, there are about 100 people at Starkware. There are actually many hundreds of people building out the Starknet ecosystem, folks worldwide on an ongoing basis. So I think that's a non-trivial challenge. There's another challenge in the context of Web3, and that is that the tokenomics that are sort of injected into many of the projects that exist out there often sort of skew focus and incentives and intents and project plans, and not always in the most productive way. And that's also something that you need to sort of learn how to operate in that environment. But I think the ecosystem as a whole is figuring out how to do that.
Incredible. Sandeep?
Yeah, so I think as Yuri also said that, I call the Web3 startups as token startups, for example, right? So I always end up saying that, for at least for a mental model, ideally these should be very, combined, but for a mental model, for any, entrepreneur, they have to think, because that's the reality of our industry currently. They have to think of it as two products. Like you have two products. One is your core product, but one is also your token. You also can't, neglect it. If you neglect it, like, it can have, bad consequences. I've seen some good companies who neglected their token side of community and all that, and then could never pick up. So that's slightly more challenging than the real world. Like when you have all the shenanigans of a startup, plus there is this the token infused into this entire thing. And as Yuri was saying, that it happens countless number of times, that this token community imposes, or kind of, there are scenarios which are not 100% productive for your long-term focus on the product and everything. But having said that, like in my learning, I feel that community and token kind of the side of the things should also be for all the budding entrepreneurs. They have to start building, because these are actually community owned products. Like all Web3 products are, eventually everything should be community owned products, right? So the community has to be there. That's kind of your founding team. Community is almost like your founding team. So you have to start building the community and focus on it from very early stages. Get people who are like long-term believers in your product and all that. So those kind of things are definitely there. But definitely it adds, as an entrepreneur, it adds a lot of pressure on you, because now not only you have to deal with the startup journey, but you also have to deal with this huge, kind of undertaking, which is the community. So, everybody who's joining this space as an entrepreneur, they should see that, they have to go through the pain that way.
So it's not just one startup, you're building two startups and two communities, two user bases, two product market fit, everything twice, two legal systems.
They should be intertwined in some way, right? That's even harder problem. It would be fine if it was two. It was like actually one.
I wanted to say two if you're lucky. Yeah, exactly.
They have to be intertwined, but they have to be treated separately. They have to be given their due attention. It's like two siblings fighting for the attention. So
but actually, that's why without this account model and wallets right now, we actually need to do three, because we have developers, users, and token holders at the same time.
So how about you, Illia? Your thoughts on leadership and leaders?
Yeah, so I think kind of on many ways, like when we started to start Near, right? Our expectation was we wanted to build apps, right? That was kind of where we're coming from. We wanted to build something on Ethereum. We were not able to at that point. And so kind of we went ahead to build Near with expectations that we actually gonna go and build apps on this ecosystem, right, as soon as possible. And so we actually hired a lot of entrepreneurs early on who would join us to be kind of, as Sandeep mentioned, like be co-founders of this, right? And then kind of go on and build this ecosystem. And so about 6 months after the mainnet, we've actually started kind of this decentralization process. So part of the reason why I don't have CEO title, because I'm not actually CEO of anything, because we're actually decentralized. We have like the original team is probably right now like 12 different companies and projects. And, we have a foundation, we have multiple infrastructure kind of companies that are built. We have multiple go-to-market companies that are built out of this, right? Funds, etc. And so kind of, I think that as a leader in the space, right, what you go from like running a company to, in a way, being the glue in some sense, right, of this ecosystem, right? And like, it's not, obviously they can exist without you, but with you, you are able to create more efficiency by communicating, by creating kind of common frameworks, common value, etc. And I think that is, indeed way harder, because you don't have any, like, in many cases, you don't have any accountability frameworks, right? It's not the company. You cannot fire someone. Like, you cannot fire anyone in community. That's a main concept, right? Like, if Elon Musk doesn't like someone, he just fire them. And then, he comes in and he does whatever he wants, right? But like, that's not how you do things in community, especially when your community is your product in many ways, right? They are kind of defining what should be done. And so through this, you need to be very much kind of open. You need to be very, very like clear and crisp on what is happening and where everybody should be going from your perspective. You should be adjusting that as you see like people in community saying that, there's other kind of alternatives that are better. and you kind of need to be this glue, right? That's kind of how I see my role.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the most one of the hardest things in this space, because you have to kind of we talk about progressive decentralization, and that's very key in going to, if you decentralize too fast, then you kind of, with all due respect, like one of the best communities in the Web3 space, Cosmos, becomes like too decentralized. Nobody is there to take decisions and things like that, right? So that is also problematic. But if you don't decentralize and then you become a fully centralized company, then you are not a Web3 company. Then also you will suffer sooner or later, right? So this balance between these two things, the balance between democracy and efficiency within the community, these are very hard challenges to balance many of the times.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think Maker right now is an interesting example as well to look at, because they kind of pull apart their company into a lot of sub DAOs, but then now there's a lot of kind of infighting between that, and so coordinating that is hard.
Also, Gitcoin is an example where they decentralized and they had this huge opportunity with this bounty platform, but they haven't executed against that roadmap in 6 months or so. It's like the main mission was kind of forgotten because they were like sponsoring memes and all the other things because the community asked for it, right? And we'll leave it to a thing. So now let's switch gears to actual product. We're all product people here. We're building technology, and we're the reason we exist is to bring this new technology to market. So I'm going to ask specific questions to you gents. Let's start with Yuri. Now, Starkware, it took me a while to understand the entire ecosystem. So you have StarkNet, you have StarkX, you have the SaaS offering, and then you have L3. I don't know if it's named yet. And then you have Cairo, and then you have this Transpiler. So there's a lot of pieces moving around. So if you're kind enough, why don't you give us a quick intro to this ecosystem? And if a developer wants to be part of this ecosystem, what should they start with, and what are these different technologies for?
Sure. So we started out with the SaaS offering, which is called StarkX, and that can scale a bunch of use cases. So spot trading and payments and transfers, and minting and trading of NFTs, and perpetual contracts, and something very interesting called DeFi pooling. And so these things are a SaaS offering. There we offer gas reduction compared to layer 1 transactions that range anywhere between 700x and 20,000x cheaper than on Ethereum. Some very significant numbers. And that we did starting mid-2020, as I mentioned. And in the process of building that out, we realized that in terms of feature velocity and security of these systems, what we actually need is a programming language that would allow us to prove any computational state. We realized that if we want to add some functionality to this offering, it becomes a very sort of slow and dangerous process, and that a programming language would make it much faster and much safer. And so Cairo was that layer that we introduced for StarkX. Then the obvious conclusion was, well, we don't need Cairo only in the hands of Starkware folks. This needs to be in the hands of any developer. And so the idea of StarkNet was born. And this is the decentralized permissionless layer 2 that we're building over Ethereum. And this allows, it's a smart contract platform, offers general computation, offers composability. As of a few weeks ago, the whole thing is powered by recursive proofs, which increases scale even further. And so this is the offering that today we want to put in the hands of developers worldwide. And there are many, many developers, much to our excitement. And this is really our focus, sort of catering to developers wherever they are. There are many developers building out this ecosystem, so infrastructure and tooling around that, but also many teams building out applications on top of this. So that's this public StarkNet. And just to complete sort of the stack, with recursive Starks, and because of the needs of applications and often Web 2 businesses who want to retain all sorts of degrees of control and need even greater scale and need even lower cost per transaction, we introduced the concept of layer 3 back in December of 2021. And this, we're going to see custom StarkNets, we're going to see StarkX instances settling on the public StarkNet as opposed to on Ethereum. And that in a way could be thought of as a layer 3, right? So the custom StarkNet or StarkX settling its proofs on the public StarkNet. the public Starknet in turn settling on layer 1 Ethereum. So a stack of layers that offers each participant the thing that they need.
Thank you. And neatly fits into the initial question on whether block space is scarce or not. You just have these tiers of settlement layers from the most expensive to almost converging to a database where there's no security, but it's dirt cheap. Thank you. I think the developers in the audience will really appreciate that intro. So let's move to the Polygon ecosystem. Polygon is a behemoth, right? So there's the L2, the POS chain. There is Polygon Edge. There is the hosted where you have the shared security, Polygon Edge, which is called SuperNet. You have the ZK Hermes, right? The EVM. There was a big announcement made just recently. And I'm sure there's like lots of other stuff that you guys are building, which are also blockchains. So Sandeep, can you paint us a mental map of how do you get started? What are these different technologies and what is live today and what is going live in the next 6 months to a year and what is like the future in like 2 years?
Sure. So basically first, I mean, as I said that, first of all, our mission is very clear that, the tech always eventually gets commoditized, right? But our goal is to get 1 billion users into Web3 in next 10, 15, whatever time it takes. So all of these various tech offerings that you are seeing, that is us kind of trying to build that ultimate suite, which has, which fulfills the requirement of various different kinds of developers. Like, I mean, one thing that we would have done the most is, and I personally would have spoken to thousands of developer teams, and there is one answer is very clear that there is no one solution fits all. Like some developers, some businesses have different needs. Some would need privacy, some would need infinite scale, extremely low cost transactions and things like that. So our idea is to map out all these kind of developer requirements, and can we offer solutions which target to most, if not all of those categories of the developers who want to build Web3 applications. So, but as a mental model, it's very simple. So there are going to be two different kinds of Polygon chains. There are going to be public chains where anybody can come and deploy, and which also will evolve into liquidity hubs, which already have evolved actually. Polygon POS chain, if you see, currently it has all, I mean 99.9% all the DeFi protocols are over there. The big DeFi protocols, the NFT protocols, everything is over there. And that kind of is the liquidity hub or kind of business center of this universe, right? But apart from that, there are also these app specific chains where the businesses who want dedicated, it's basically also for all the computer science engineers, they would understand the difference between a shared server as and a dedicated server. So public chains are like the shared server. If some other app becomes really big, suddenly on one particular day has a lot of demand, your app is also going to suffer, let's say, in terms of high gas fees or network latency issues and things like that. So if you are big enough, you want to have your own chain, you can have your own dedicated chain. So that's the core mental model. Public shared chains, which become the business centers, or the dedicated chains for the businesses to have full control over their Web3 journeys. And all of this that you see, that it falls under this whole, this simple framework: public chains and dedicated chains. So for example, Polygon POS is currently a public chain, and we are doing very interesting things, the upgrades that are being worked upon on that, but I don't want to talk more about it right now. But then you have ZK EVM, which is also going to be a zero knowledge roll-up or zero knowledge powered layer 2s. And initially, they will also act as the, kind of the public chains only. But eventually we want them to also evolve into offerings where people can have their dedicated, chains with those technologies. SuperNet, as you said, right? SuperNet is basically, which is built on Edge framework, Edge framework, anybody can use. It's an open framework, just like Polkadot substrate. Anybody can use and create their own chains, like Tendermint, Cosmos Tendermint. So that's like a public goods kind of things. But using that Edge framework, we kind of are building these clients for these layer twos, which can or cannot, which should have these pluggable things, like you can have a simple side chain. You want to have a simple side chain because layer 2 comes with a cost, right? You want to have a simple side chain, go ahead and do it. If you want to plug in the zero knowledge proving with your chain in future, go ahead and just add one module and do it. So that's the future. We are trying to do it. But you asked about the core mental model. Core mental model is this only: public chains, dedicated chains. Everything else is kind of nuances and details about it. That's immaterial.
Incredible. Illia, so you guys have the sharded L1 chain, which is near, and you also have the Aurora kind of EVM. I don't know if it's fair to call it an L2, which is through Rainbow, and you have the multiple shards, and then you have Octopus, which I believe is also part of the Near ecosystem. So how do developers understand everything that's going on the Near ecosystem, and where do they get started?
Yeah, I think the mental model that Sandeep mentioned is very much kind of in that direction. Kind of generally speaking, I see this as a spectrum, and so there's a spectrum of security and there's a spectrum of privacy. So it's kind of, and then so you can choose in this quadrant like which thing you need. And so there's a kind of more secure, less private, which is what layer 1 is right now. And obviously there's a lot of work on how to make it more private, but kind of generally that's where we are right now. You have an option of, kind of more secure but private, for example, for you, if you want to run your own like ZK rollup or something similar. So you can prove, but you don't show what happened there. You can have kind of still public, but less secure. And this is kind of a sidechain. So what Octopus offers you is a sidechain capability. You literally can just like send your WASM of your runtime, and there will be boot up, like a bunch of nodes will boot it up and run it as a sidechain. And you pay with like portion of your token inflation to these validators. And so it's like a pretty straightforward path. There's like reviews kind of embedded in that process. There's upgrades, like all of that stuff is already there. And then there's a Calimero actually, which is a private shard. So this ability to run kind of near infrastructure internally behind the firewall inside specific, like some company, or for your private DAO, or for any other entity, right? And that allows you to kind of, while having the same namespace, and I think that's the most important. That's why I talk about remote accounts as well. Like namespace is really important, such that you can actually do routing between all those things. You can run the same applications that you can run near public chain and then communicate with them. You can actually issue NFTs on private shard, push them to public shard, maybe trade them for a public assets on a private shard, etc. Right? So it's all kind of works as one kind of multi-tenant infrastructure, although it's run by different teams and companies. And so kind of the idea here is, as a user, you should be able just to use it, right? Even if you're like on Google's private shard, for example, you can still log in with, wallets of Near, you can sign transactions, you can do all this. Like literally, like all of this is fully interoperable. Like from a user's perspective, you should not need to think, like when you go to, inside intranet in your company, or you go in the public, right? You don't think as a user actually, oh, it's actually behind my firewall or not, right? Like you just log in, enter your SSO, and you're gone. And so we have SSO with wallets, so like we need to make this kind of ubiquitous, and that's really what we're trying to do. And sharding again is like something that we can just continue scaling underneath the users and developers without them needing to think about it. So kind of the mental model we are going after is like users and developers just build, they select which kind of tenancy they need, right? Is like for my company, is this for public? Is this kind of more specific, like need specific parameters on the, for example, no fees or some like tuned consensus, and then kind of they just launch their app and then it runs in this environments and users can just use it.
Incredible, very exciting. Okay, so let's wrap up here, and we'll end with a final question. So this is what makes it exciting for you guys to continue pushing so hard. Illia, when we met in Korea, you released that JavaScript stuff, right? Sandeep, you're everywhere. Yuri, I see the Starkware events all over the world, right? So you guys, you've been at it for many, many years, and you continue to push so hard, like it's day one. And let's hear some words of wisdom on how to keep trekking when you don't have to, right? I think our respective projects are very successful, but it's not enough. I'm sure I'm butchering this Chinese proverb that when the tongue tastes sugar, it wants more, right? So let's hear from you guys. What makes you tick? Let's hear from Sandeep.
Yeah, so I mean, yesterday also, or 2 days back, I was on a podcast and somebody was asking me that when did you realize, or when did you had that, or what did you feel when you had that inflection point of Polygon, and it becomes. And I actually thought about it, and I realized that actually that inflection point has not come yet. So, I mean, we are just at such an early stage for all of us. Like, I mean, although the valuations in the crypto world are like, over exaggerated everywhere. Like even in these, corrected markets, the valuations are completely like, if let's say Polygon was a Web2 company with this level of scale and this level of adoption, we would be hardly 500 million or $1 billion valuation. But in crypto, the valuations are always amplified and things like that, right? So I think it gives a false sense of that you have done something. I feel that, not only I feel, and I tell the team that, we are at day zero. It is actually the fact, like, if we remove all these delusions of crypto, it is the fact that we are all at day zero. So I think there is no question about slowing down anytime soon. The second part is also that I think the mission also provides a clarity on that, and for us the mission is very different. As I said, that Web3 adoption for masses, and I think we are far away from that. Like, there's so much to be done. So yeah, there's no question of slowing down anytime soon.
Amazing. Yuri?
You're on mute, Yuri.
Apologies. Could have been more interesting on mute, I want to say. So the thing that actually keeps me super excited is the pace with which sort of new ideas and new people are injected into the ecosystem, and that's just at a human level, that's a very pleasant experience, emotionally and intellectually. An example I've been giving, and it's not that ideas that someone introduced years ago are now coming to fruition, which in itself is a very gratifying thing. It's this notion of people who presented ideas months and sometimes weeks ago, and suddenly they threw out the idea and suddenly it's done. And these are people who a few months ago you did not know existed. And the example I've been giving recently is there's this team out of Buenos Aires, Lambda class. We didn't know them. They showed up one day in the Starkware ecosystem, and they went ahead and implemented the Cairo virtual machine in Rust in a matter of weeks, and they're beasts, and they're the most wonderful and pleasant beasts on top of it all. And so they just out of nowhere, and from my perspective, right, they were there all along, building and doing and then all that, and through this ecosystem, all these groups and individuals sort of coordinating and building new stuff together. To me, that's just a very exciting experience.
Yeah. And this is like, the beast experience. Like suddenly you will see some people in hackathon in 2 days, they would build something which are like, what? Like, and then, you see Starkware people calling people beast. Imagine, like, they are the Starkware is.
I'll say this. I'll say this. They're beasts. They're very pleasant. They're not funny, but they're very, they're very nice people.
I mean, amazing.
The only drawback is they're not funny.
How about you, Illia?
Yeah, I mean, I second the kind of the community feel that Web3 gives is unparalleled. I think although, people just come in and do things, and kind of many times it's like people do public, what we call public goods, right? Things that are just like good for everyone without, always like looking for something. There's like a lot of people coming in who are just excited about building things. For me as well, we also want to bring this technology to kind of mainstream. And so like seeing actual people who are not technical, who are not normally would think of blockchain using this, right? So I'm kind of, for context, I'm from Ukraine, and we actually used blockchain, right, to help a bunch of people because we could send money directly to people, and like when the war was just starting, there was no clear like if the banks would work, right, if the banks would just get bombed. And so crypto was the only and kind of delivery method of help you can do, and so I think that is also exciting. And just like, given I've seen that working, even though in very like, bad context, like I'm excited to actually see that working at the world scale, right? Like we still we still are at day zero of like actual adoption, right? Like if you ask, any random person on the street, like they probably use Google, they probably on Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, but they still are not like user of this. And so like that's what we should be aiming for.
Yeah.
Incredible. Let me just share a quick number stat because I run Covalent, a data company. So GitHub has 30 million registered developers. So that's the benchmark. It's probably the most adopted developer product in the world. Infura is the most adopted Web3 kind of product, and it has 300,000 developers registered. So that's 1% penetration. Covalent has about 35,000 developers on our platform. So that's 0.1%. So in our mission to make data accessible, we're literally just putting our shoes on and heading to the front door. We haven't even left the house to go on our mission. So nobody is making victory laps just yet, right? So you guys are absolutely right. Like this is the traction numbers and the number of apps is I think it's just not even the start. So when the community says that this is the winner, it's not really, right? It's so early in this Web3 space. All right, Jen. So fantastic panel here. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope the audience was also able to appreciate the wisdom that you guys were so graciously shared with us. And I think we can wrap it up here. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.